Germany's economy minister raises concerns over the prospect of China taking almost a quarter stake in the port of Hamburg.
The UK's new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak faces calls for a general election as he attends his first Prime Minister's questions in Parliament.
The German government is pushing ahead with a controversial deal to allow a Chinese state company to buy into the port of Hamburg. After a backlash from domestic critics, China's shipping company COSCO is being offered a reduced 24.9% stake as opposed to the original 35% bid. It's the latest in a series of investments that's seen China acquire shares in major shipping hubs across Europe, some entirely under Beijing's control. Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who supports the Chinese purchase, will travel to China next month with a delegation of German business leaders. Economy Minister Robert Habeck will be going with him. But coalition partners in the government have warned against growing Chinese influence over critical German infrastructure.
Insgesamt ist es richtig, dass wir gelernt haben, dass
Overall, it's important that we've learnt that dependencies on countries that may then play their own interests into these dependencies and then want to blackmail us are no longer just an abstract phenomenon. Look at gas in Russia. They're a reality in this world. We should not repeat these mistakes.
Gas, Russland Realität in dieser Welt sind und wir sollten diese Fehler nicht wiederholen.
China's increasing involvement in European ports has provoked debate within the EU for some time. Leaders are trying to strike a delicate balance between attracting trade with China while limiting its potential impact on the bloc's commercial life and security interests.
The UK's new Prime Minister has faced calls for a general election just 2 days into the job. After a first full meeting of his cabinet, Rishi Sunak appeared in Parliament for his inaugural battle with the opposition leader. As Sunak came to power through an internal Conservative Party election, Keir Starmer said he should allow the general public to have their say.
Even his own side know he's not on the side of working people. That's why the only time he ran in a competitive election, he got trounced by the former Prime Minister. So why doesn't he put it to the test, let working people have their say and call a general election?
However, Sunak insisted that he does have a mandate, inherited from his party's election victory in 2019.
Our mandate is based on the manifesto that we were elected on, to remind him an election that we won and they lost. A mandate that says we want a stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders and levelling up. That is the mandate that I and this government will deliver for the British people.
After months of chaos within the Conservatives, Sunak's first challenge is to bring unity and stability to his party. He will quickly have to convince voters to re-elect him in 2 years' time.
Well, to talk through the new British Prime Minister's performance at PMQs and what it means for the country in deep economic turmoil, I'm joined now by Dr. Rod Dacomb, Director of the Centre for British Government and Politics at King's College London. Great to have you with us. Thanks for taking the time. So, how did the Prime Minister fare in your book?
So it was interesting. One of the things you expect from any new Prime Minister is to mark out the distinctions between themselves and their predecessors. Rishi Sunak was obviously very keen to do that. There are two takeaways I think we can get from his performance today. First of all, loud applause, uproarious support from the government benches. I mean, this is clearly a Prime Minister who has the support, at least ostensibly, of most of his party. Economic questions are going to be what make or break Rishi Sunak's premiership, and they're going to come in pretty soon. He's facing a whole set of economic issues which don't have simple answers. How his response is received by the country, and we already know, by the way, that he's not going to give those answers on Halloween. He's going to wait until mid-November. That's going to be the make or break for him.
And on that point, what do you think about that? Does that delay tell us anything?
Yes and no. I think it probably tells us more about what's going on behind the scenes. I suspect Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor is having a greater say, both on questions of timing, but also of substance. I think it's significant that we're going to have an Office of Budget Responsibility evaluation of the proposals that we published with the budget. I think How those things play out is going to be really interesting. I suspect that, as Rishi Sunak himself has signalled, he's called it difficult choices. I suspect there'll be a lot of pain for the British people. Where that pain lands will be interesting. Labour will focus on tax cuts for the rich, lack of support for the poorest off. Rishi Sunak will talk about stability and responsibility. Now, whichever of those lines, those narratives lands best with the British public will tell us a lot about how politics is going to play out up until Christmas and beyond.
Russian occupation officials continued to indicate that efforts to relocate civilians in Kherson region to the east bank of Dnipro River are part of a wider resettlement scheme. Thousands of Kherson residents have been ferried across the Dnipro River away from the front lines and further into Russian-held territory as the occupying forces prepare to defend the regional capital from an anticipated Ukrainian counteroffensive. So far, more than 22,000 people have crossed the east bank of the Dnipro River, said Kirill Strimausov, deputy head of the Russian-appointed regional military administration. He also claimed that the administration's resettlement program is designed to accommodate 60,000 people. Strimausov's statement seemingly admits that Russian occupation officials view the so-called evacuations as precursors to the permanent resettlement of a large population of Ukrainians. Meanwhile, the Institute for the Study of War points at the resistance movement that has spread throughout all the territories occupied by Russia, specifically in the south from Kherson to the region of Zaporizhia. The think tank says partisans have likely been active in and around Melitopol since at least mid-March, and their growing activities continue to pose threats to Russian control of occupied territories. Over the recent days, Ukrainian partisans conducted an attack targeting the occupation had in Russian-occupied Zaporizhia region. The UK Defence Ministry said in its latest update that there have been at least 6 incidences of sabotage against Russian railway infrastructure since June, which the Russian anti-war group Stop the Wagons claimed responsibility for. Now, the Russian leadership will be increasingly concerned that even a small group of citizens has been sufficiently opposed to the conflict to resort to physical sabotage.
EU countries are stuck between a rock and a hard place as they attempt to contain price hikes as well as tackling economic downturn. All this as discontent spreads. The Eurozone is particularly affected by this dilemma, with the European Central Bank expected to raise interest rates on Thursday to calm inflation. A tough task for the ECB. Interest rates cannot be selective, but the headline Eurozone inflation rate of 9.9% hides wide variations, from 6.2% in France to 17.1% in the Netherlands.
The euro area has one single monetary policy in front of 19 inefficiently coordinated different fiscal budgetary policies with different orientations. The rift over different economic support measures for people has shown huge differences, even among the big countries. We've talked about the 200 billion euros allocated by Germany, but even France has allocated important sums since autumn 2021. Yet all these policies haven't been coordinated at a European level.
This lack of coordination in economic policy is the Eurozone's Achilles heel compared with other big economies like the USA. There, the coherence between monetary policy and budgetary measures is more effective in fighting the threat of recession. The S&P SMI index is an effective indicator of the purchasing activities of companies. Below the 50% threshold is a poor score, as it means companies are not investing so much in the future.
We can discuss how we distribute that loss of income across, again, different categories of the population and trying to protect the low-income households. But it means also that higher income individuals need to accept that there is a loss of income. We cannot compensate via public expenditure each and every individual of firms in our economy.
Maintaining consumption could increase public debt and be an extra burden for the state, already under strain. Now politicians will need to find the right tools to fix a faltering economy on the brink of recession.